Okay, so this is my interview for my brother, Ian Knight. I have a couple questions I'm gonna ask him. You can introduce yourself if you'd like.
Sure, no problem. Well, my name is Ian Knight, and I am Nathan's brother.
Okay, so my first question is, before you began to work at Google, what was your life like?
Let's see. Before I started working at Google, I lived in Moreno Valley. Um, I was working at Circuit City at the time. They had rebranded their store and came out with a store called The City, and I was working there. And I actually saw on TV there was a show where they explained how it was to work at Google, and that's when I first entertained the idea. But um, before working there, I was just going to community college and working at Circuit City in Moreno Valley.
Okay. Um, my next question is, I understand that you left your home at an early age. Why is that?
For me, um, I felt it was time for me to spread my wings. Being a young man, I was 20. I was 21, 22 at the time, and I just had big aspirations and things I wanted to try to accomplish, and I just felt like it was time for me to get on out on my own and try that as a young man. Um, and when I left, I had already been researching living in the Bay Area, and I learned that it was the tech capital of the world. All of the companies that are as somebody, the Apples, the Googles, the Facebook, Twitters, and it seemed like all of the big companies either are headquartered there or have an office there, and it's just a very just entrepreneurial uh, area. Um, Even in addition to the big companies, just a lot of startups start here. Um, it just seemed like a good place to get into and network. I just wanted to meet people who were doing things that I had never seen before. And at the time I left, I felt it was time to try and network and get my feet wet in that kind of market.
Mm, I understand that. Okay. And for my next question is, what kind of work did you do at Google?
So I've done a few jobs there. When I first started there, I worked on the Google Maps team, and my job was to monitor and edit all of the maps, the locations. How can I explain it? So, for example, if you looked up a McDonald's in Moreno Valley, I would have to check that listing and verify that the maps marker is in the correct place. So I'd have to look at the street view and make sure that the marking is in the right place. I'd have to verify the phone numbers and the website listed uh, to make sure that all of that info was correct. And then if it was correct, then I would approve it. And then if it was not, then I would basically deny that upload. Um, but the majority of my time at Google, I went from the outdoor mapping team and got promoted to work on the indoor maps. The indoor maps was like a indoor navigation, where basically, Google created a product where a user could walk on their phone and walk into a big building where someone would normally get lost, like a big airport or a casino or a mall, and we would actually map out the coordinates indoors. I had a team of 6 I was in charge of, and we would map out and collect those points indoors, and then send the data back to the engineers. So then that way, the next time someone walked in that same space on their phone, they would be able to see where the bathrooms are, what restaurants are nearby, and on what floor. It kind of worked the same way your GPS does in your car, but except just you walking in indoors. It was pretty cool.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I know for malls like the Ontario Mills Mall, it's pretty useful. It's easy to get lost in there.
Yeah, for sure.
So my next question is, I understand that you got the ability to travel because of this job. Where did you get to go?
Yes. So as we signed more contracts and more businesses wanted to get their businesses uploaded to the maps, they would fly me out to these places depending on where they are, because I was actually one of the first people hired for this project. So in the very beginning, before we had teams in multiple locations, they would just fly us out all over, and I got to go to Europe. I went to the UK. I got to go to Australia for 2 months. I went to Sydney and to Melbourne. I've been to Japan. I was in Tokyo for 2 months. Been to Canada. I've been all over the U.S. I probably can't even name all the states, but probably the states that stick out the most are the states that I never would have gone to on my own. Just road trips, just middle of nowhere. Idaho, Alabama. Mapping out places because we signed Home Depot, and Home Depot, there's about 2,000 stores in the U.S., and I myself, I've probably been inside over 200 of them all over the U.S. So just I would get assigned a few states, and I would take my team, and we would go to every Home Depot in those states in that radius. So it was pretty cool just to see the rest of the U.S. and see how other places operate. I really credit that to opening my mind up even more and getting me to think outside of myself. The world is a lot bigger than just where you live, for sure.
I would agree. Another question I would like to ask, what was the best part about the job? I know you say you traveled a lot, and that's probably the best part, but I'm not sure. I haven't asked you that question yet. So what was the best part for you?
Yeah, for sure the travel. For sure the travel. Before I started working at Google, I hadn't been to many places. For sure I had never left the country before. But to work for a company that pays for you to travel, so it removed the stress of money, because not only were they paying for me to go, but they were paying me to go. So it's just a different feeling to know that you're going to travel somewhere to a nice city or a nice country, and your room is paid for, you're getting paid, and just able to experience another culture. I just learned so much, especially once we leave the U.S. I learned that the U.S. is pretty young. You know, the U.S. is only, you know, a few hundred years old, and then you get to, you know, London, and there's a church or a building that's been standing since the 1300s, you know, 1400s, and it's still there. And you know, and you think about the U.S. not even being around till the 1700s, being official. So, and then going to Japan and seeing buildings that have been there for thousands of years, you know, just really opened my mind up just the culture of it all, and just being able to travel, and also the team that I travel with, you develop bonds with them, and being able to experience new things with people. Those are friends that are still my friends to this day, just because of the trips that we went on together. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I can understand that. And that's a good point you brought up about the U.S. being fairly new. I don't really think about that either, but this country isn't really that old, so that's pretty interesting. But I have one more question for you. How were you treated as an employee there? Was it good? Did you ever face any problems? How were you treated there?
Yes, I did. I mean, overall, it was good. I don't even know if I would call it problems, but yeah, I definitely did face some issues, mainly because while I was working there, I wasn't a full-time employee. I was a contractor, and when you work at Google, all of the full-time employees have a white badge, and all of the contractors have a red badge. And sometimes when you're walking around campus, whether it's to get something to eat or do whatever, and you'll come across full-time employees, and sometimes it felt like they would look at your badge before they looked at you. And it almost felt like almost like they were judging you based on the color of your badge. Like, oh, he's not a full-time employee. So you would sometimes meet people who would think just because they were full-time and you weren't, that, you know, they were smarter than you, or they were more entitled than you were because they, you know, were in this club of being full-time, because, you know, everyone wants to work there. They're extremely popular. So for some of the full-time employees, they were definitely drinking the Kool-Aid, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They kind of felt like they were higher than everyone else. So I've had to deal with that, but not as much, because, like I said, my job, it was 90% travel. So I was gone most of the time anyway, traveling. But when I would come back, I would have to deal with that sometimes, where, you know, people wanting to know who your manager is, like, for no reason, like, just to try and, you know, talk above you, to talk to another person wearing a white badge. It was almost like they didn't feel like they could communicate with you. So I dealt with that, but I think overall, though, it was a good experience.
Yeah, overall it does sound fun, and that kind of sucks. I had no idea about the whole badge system. That's pretty interesting. But that was our last question. Do you have anything else you want to add? Any tips for anyone who are going into this field?
Yeah, I think my tips, it's good to network, especially if you want to work in a place like Google. The stat, I believe, is 90% of the employees that work there were referred. So it is really who you know, and also stay focused. You know, don't let somebody tell you what you can't do or what you aren't capable of doing. Oftentimes, I feel like people put their fears onto you, what they don't think they can do. They tell you that you can't do it. So I know it sounds cliche, but I think you just, my advice would be to believe in yourself, and also network, surround yourself with people that are either going where you want to be or they're already there. Because then you can learn from them to figure out how they got there.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Well, thank you for that interview. That will be uploaded to the Nathan Podcast, episode 2. I want to thank you for coming out, Mr. Knight, and sharing your experiences with us. And that's all we have time for. Thank you.
Not a problem, Nathan.